A very good evening. So we are back again at Reveal Prime Time. And today we have an option of knowing something from two very great people in our aesthetic industry. The topic for today's discussion is really something which anybody who is in the industry thriving through difficult times, whether new, whether old, is looking forward to. How do we face, how do we survive, how did we manage, and how are we going to go forward in this COVID time? When I say in this times, all of us here have faced this situation in smaller form, bigger form, greater form, and we all have moved on. We have had personal losses, we have had financial losses, but every business has moved on. Coming to aesthetic business, coming to dermatology, it is something which is an elective, not an emergency. But yet, clinics have thrived, doctors have continued their practices, and patients have been cured. So without wasting much time, I'll be introducing to the first speaker of the day for today, Dr. Malvika Kohli. We all know her. She is one of the pioneers of the aesthetic dermatology in India and in the practice for the last 27 years, running successfully clinic in Mumbai. And she's a sought after educator, trainer for injectables. We all know that. And I've been very lucky to be part of her workshops and trainings in MCAS through my previous organizations. She has been featured in Mumbai Top 10 Dermatologists in India Today, and the awards can go on and on and on. And we all know that she was a cosmetology, she's a well-known consultant to Lakme India Fashion Week, Femina Miss India, Vogue Beauty. She was a panelist at Vogue Bridal Show, and it can go on. On a personal note, if you ask me, I'll just add only one thing about her, that it's someone, very few people who have equal expertise in clinical dermatology and same grace and essence in aesthetics, and go with the same elegance in both of them. So she's one of those with an excellent command over anatomy. We have witnessed her with her techniques and whichever technology, be it in lasers, injectables, peels, and clinical dermatology, she aces it with grace. So I welcome Dr. Malvika and thank you for joining us and giving your bite for this program today. Coming to our next person who will always be there, and he is our showman. So Dr. Neeraj Pandey, he is Director and Chief Consultant Derma Clinic, Skin Laser, Founder and Director Medisculpt, Senior Consultant Denovo, Vice President IAD Real, Secretary Sarkady, and of course the list can go on and on. But yes, he is one person I always say, the supremo kind of, who can bring our new generation, our current generation, our KOLs, our young, our PGs, everybody together under one umbrella. So I welcome you, Dr. Neeraj. Thank you for moderating the session once again for us today. And he is our face on Reveal Prime Time on this Reveal Expert Lounge always. Without wasting much time, so we'll have a session from Dr. Malvika. We'll have a short commercial break, and we'll again have question and answer from Dr. Neeraj and Dr. Malvika. You can keep typing your and questions to the chat box and send us. We'll be happy to assist. So over to Dr. Malvika. Let's start.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining today. And it's a great pleasure to be here. And thank you, Reveal Lasers. Thank you, Snigdha. That was such a heartwarming and lovely introduction. It's very special to me. And I've known you for many years. And thank you for everything that you said in these difficult times. These warm words make such a difference. It makes life worth it. It makes everything worth it. Thank you. And of course, it's a huge privilege to be with Dr. Neeraj Pandey. And I'm really looking forward to the showman's questions and queries and troubleshoot with him and brainstorm with him once I finish my lecture. So yes, I think we will have a good jugalbandi and we will have a good time together. So thank you, Reveal, and I'm really happy to be here. So with that, I think I shall screen share. So aesthetics in the COVID pandemic with real-time challenges and situations faced is what I'm here to share with you today. And I'd like to thank all of you for being with us. Somehow, the COVID pandemic, while it was very scary and while it was intimidating, it also, brought out that old saying that when the going gets tough, the tough get going. And what I decided to adopt, and that's what I decided would work for me, and not to run away or shy away from a situation, but to understand it deeply, as well as to take the bull by its horns and ride through the pandemic, of course, with a lot of bumps and with a lot of hiccups. But then what is life all about? And any journey which is a little rougher and tougher makes you also a more evolved person. So this was my take, and I'm going to be really sharing with you what happens in my clinic and how it goes for me, and how I have handled it, after which we can have some good questions and queries, and we'll do some real-time sharing as well. So COVID-19, 2020, 2021, the year that was, hashtag the year that was. There could not be a more evocative photograph on the Time magazine last year, with the person of the year being the medical workers. And I would like to give my salutations and tribute to all of them who have, the scar faces and the scars on their body, the mental scars, the physical scars. It's been really something like a third world war. And it's the mask that really became the focus of our attention and became singularly the most important sign of safety. And so this was me in my PPE in the very early days. I opened up my clinics in 2020. So I'm going to ride with you from June 2020, 15 June 2020 to date. This was me in the middle of June 2020, wearing PPE in all different forms. And it was hot, it was humid, and these were my early days. And then we slowly graduated into being more comfortable, more relaxed with the new working normal. And then we have the scrubs, that has become the best style statement, fashion statement today, color coordinated, different colors for different staff and all of that. And this is us now, how we look today. And this is probably how we feel most comfortable with our masks, our shields. And with time, we've had to vary the SOPs, but we'll get into that later. But this is how we look today. But you can also see we look cool and confident. That's most important. Well, the N95, there were so many masks, from starting with the Living Guard, the valve mask, to the N95, to varieties of N95. But the N95 was really the real savior. This also happens to be my husband, who's also my real hero. And he believes in the N95 and has enforced both clinics to wear it all the time, and found us the most comfortable ones. And we're really comfortable wearing it. And it has been the real savior. Let's talk about some ethical issues. Like Snigdha said, aesthetic dermatology is a non-essential service, but for some people, it's essential. And the self-image feel-good factor are needs that even in this pandemic, people have been addressing and wanting to feel good, because they had nothing else to feel good. There was no travel, there was no expenditure in terms of going out. So they wanted at least to feel good about themselves. And that whole Zoom phobia and that whole Zoom need, and the whole virtual need people began to view themselves more accurately and were wondering how they looked in front of others. So that self-image became very important. Of course, our responsibility was utmost safety for them and our patients, and of course, balancing financial setbacks with concerns of ourselves, staff, and our families. So, can an aesthetic practice survive a pandemic? My answer is yes. And let's see how we went about it. So, obviously, we ramped up services, we created teams, everybody worked alternate days. The most important thing was staff screening for antibodies before they joined back. So antibody testing was a cornerstone. And the value of testing for PCR, and now even the RAT, the rapid antibody testing kits for patients, to keep a few kits in the clinic. You can use them to your discretion. You're not going to use it for every patient. This has become a very interesting feature that we didn't have when we first started, and that's been of great value. And have I tested myself? Of course, I've tested myself numerous times, and that's been more as a preventive, because you go back to families. That's been the most worrisome part, has been going back to your families when you spend hours in the clinic. I think the COVID vaccine has been a huge game changer, and its impact has helped to create a bubble in our clinic. We were one of the first. I was one of the first in January 22nd. There I was taking my first jab. By end of Feb, I had my second jab. And the entire clinic has got their 2 jabs. Doctors, staff, everybody. So we created our bubble, and we move in bubbles, which has helped to give us more confidence. teleconsults continue, and alongside with them in person. And whenever things are quieter and calmer, the in-person goes up. Indian patients prefer in-person. They feel that they feel more confident. I think there's also been a huge sort of, difference between the younger, the next gen dermatologists and doctors to the mature and more seasoned doctors. There has been differences where the younger can be a little more adventurous. Of course, everybody's taking precautions, but maybe they can start their practices earlier. But the mature and seasoned ones would like to take a step back, especially those of us who go to hospitals. So I do have an OPD practice at 2 hospitals, Just Look and Breach Candy in Mumbai. And I have, initially, I did not go to the OPDs at all, and I've barely visited my OPDs. Attendance has been poor. Some of them have trickled into the clinics. And I find that in general, it's been a very high anxiety time making some very important decisions. And I think that for those of us who had to make a choice between the first wave and the second wave. In the first wave, we kept the clinics closed for 3 months in Mumbai. We had no choice. But in the second wave, I have kept the clinics open throughout because public transport is available. The staff have their passes and they're allowed. And though it was very scary, we still kept it open, but my staff stood by me. And I think that is key. So to give the staff the confidence, and of course they were vaccinated. But overall, it was a very high anxiety time throughout the year, especially with the second wave. Patient categorization, I've noticed so many varieties. Those who are extremely scared and wary versus those who totally trust you and the clinic. Risk perception has been variable. Mask habits and hygiene have been very, very variable. Screening forms have been useful to a certain degree. Our loyal patrons have come back. Then we have patients who are willing, and then the patients are not willing to test. Last year in 2020, the patients were more willing. This year, they're not so willing. So the RAT kits have been useful. There are certain percentage of patients who are not concerned about COVID at all. And that has been the difference between the first wave and the second wave, where in this wave, patients have actually been more scared, especially because the young ones have been getting it and the children. And it has affected across the generations, whereas last year it was more the seniors. So this is also, this whole patient categorization has brought about lifestyle swings and a change in the balance of lifestyles with lifestyle extremes. And it has also brought about a lot of financial equations where even your patients who earlier had no problem at all have begun to have to think. And at the same time, there have been these swings between the extremely good and healthy and then the ones who just gave it up and did whatever they felt like doing. And that's why we've seen so many variety of issues. Let's come to the consultations. Teleconsults and in-person have been, actually the teleconsults have been the savior. And whenever there's lockdown and it's quieter, the teleconsults go up. And we have had an exceedingly good teleconsult practice, very satisfying. We have kept it within the clinic. I have not used an online platform. I eventually found that with my secretaries and my own, with my own system within the clinic and with my doctors, we worked out a team with the coordination and it worked out really well. And the patients have actually found us more accessible that way because they have a direct line into the clinic, which the mobile lines with which they can directly contact our doctors. And so therefore the liaisoning has been more intimate and their problem solving has been more swifter and more definitive. The in-person consults, we've taken all the care and there've been a fair number. Even in the second wave, we've had in-person. In the last week, in fact, the in-person consults have picked up. And so consultations have continued. Initially a trickle, now it's getting better. Skincare products, nutraceuticals have remained the backbone of the practice because skincare will never die. Skincare is huge on social media, generates a lot of interest. Skincare products are constantly being sought after, and patients now have the time to use it. So by keeping the clinics open, we have found that this vertical of skincare products, of nutraceuticals, where, from curcumin to CoQ to vitamin C to glutathione to the collagen, edible collagens, all of them have been extremely popular. Patients have been happy to pick them up. It has also helped to give the patients a little longer length of time before they can start procedures for those who are worried, or then for those who are starting off, it is supplementing them well. So, and even the pharmacies, for those of you who have pharmacies or outletting products, it has helped us as well. This vertical has been really the backbone. Dermatology, this has survived, and it always pays off to have a strong base in your parent subject and to be a sound clinician and physician. that will always remain. In dermatology-related issues, of course, hair loss with androgenetic alopecia worsening in male and females tops the list. Maskne was a new term that came about, and we've seen it in various forms. In fact, I saw even a lot of cases of LPP because of these aromatic candles and diffusers being used by people at home to feel good. So a lot of home hair color being done. So I feel that I did end up seeing a lot of LPP. Of course, tanning, dullness, and loss of glow will always be there. And patients even sitting at home felt that way, even with good diets. A lot of flare-up of inflammatory acne and PCOS. A lot of patients hadn't tested for a whole year, so low ferritins, B12, low D3s, raised TSH, and prolactin, probably because of the stress, sometimes lack of exercise, because of lack of facilities. We saw a lot of herpes zoster. We saw aggravation of psoriasis, including hand and foot psoriasis, as well as pustular psoriasis, and a lot of hand eczemas, obviously because of hand washing and sanitizers. We saw more atopic dermatitis in children, including hair loss in children. Patients on immunosuppressive therapy had their issues. COVID-related rashes, we saw a few, not too many. We also saw a lot of steroid-induced acneiform eruptions and ecchymosis in some of the older patients. And there were a lot of vaccine-related queries, whether they could take it, especially our atopic patients, those with known drug allergies. They were calling up, even just sometimes you became that go-to person to tell them whether the vaccine was okay for them, which vaccine to take, what should be the gap. We did help a lot of patients that way. As far as procedures and procedural SOPs go, well, procedural SOPs, we had really studied them very hard last year in the 3 months that we had before things opened up. There were so many webinars. They were so fruitful, so useful, helped to solidify a base. And then our colleagues brought up, in May 2020, some really good articles, which helped to create consensus and give us guidelines. Me too, in October 8th, I co-authored a paper with the changing paradigm of an aesthetic practice. And it really had helped. All these webinars, these papers did help us to create a uniformity in SOPs. And that is something now we've all rolled out. And, this is just something I innovated. This I call the muzzle mask because it goes from the nose to the lips to the chin. It helped us to do procedures. Of course, it's not 100% protection, but you feel a sense of safety. So does the patient. We could do peels, we could do some facials, we could do some jet treatments, some lasers. We could do a lot of procedures with this. Of course, the procedural time was very short. You could even reduce it to just to do a chin filler. You could even reduce it to quickly do a lip filler, of course, with the betadine and the H2O2 gargles and all of that. But what I'm trying to say is that some innovation does help. And this helped to give a little higher level of comfort to both the patient and us. In the procedures, of course, we went through this whole risk categorization from low to moderate to high, but honestly, all procedures are high risk when the mask is off, and that's a reality. Even that a muzzle mask that I showed you, that is just for some partial protection, and just, that's something that just makes you feel safer, but you got to speeden up, you got to be really efficient. And when the mask is off, there's no question, any procedure becomes high risk. And that was my take, and I was extremely careful. Therefore, I may, whenever I knew the mask was off, the screening of the patient, and also the questionnaire we went through, only the doctors went through it. And initially, like last year, and even this year, our loyal patrons were the ones with whose backgrounds we knew, were the ones we would always start with, because that was what we were most comfortable with, and so were they. So what are the burning questions? Which procedures can be done safely? Which are to be avoided completely? What about unfinished packages? What about unduly persistent patients? What do we do when patients want to come for their Botox and fillers? Hygiene costs, do we add it? So cost reduction. So honestly, all procedures, like I said, without a mask are high risk. Eventually, we found that I'm going to share with you all the procedures one by one. Was there anything to be avoided completely? Yes, in the peak of the pandemic, any procedure is high risk because there's no procedure that you can't do that you can do with a mask on. So then you'll have to avoid everything completely. But as things open up, then you can slowly begin to do those procedures where you can either wear this kind of mask or the patient's background and history. There will be patients who've had COVID. When should you start their procedures? 1 month after they have a negative PCR. Though this second wave, the negative PCR was not a real rider. So probably 1 month after their last testing. And if they remain clear and no symptoms. What about unfinished packages? We've honored them all without any slashing. What about unduly persistent patients? Well, we've sort of tested the waters. Sometimes we've actually said no. And we've seen whether they still persist, because there's some of them who are still doctor shopping. I recently had somebody who said, I want to do a lip filler with you, but what's the cost? That put up my red flag. I knew this was a patient I'd never met before. This was only on the telephone. So I just said, no, we're not just doing lip fillers right now. We're not ready to do it. And I weeded that patient out because I didn't want to take the risk. Just an example that I've given you. What about patients who come in for Botox fillers? Well, that is something that we've been able to circumvent quite easily, and we've been able to do it. We've had even sometimes in the better times, like last year in August, September, October, patients flying down also from other cities, which was a huge risk. They had probably work had started, they were flying down, but then they would do their PCR and come. Last year, the PCR was definitely more of a rider to judge. This year, we've had a lot of second wave, a lot of negative PCRs. So it's become actually tougher. So then the RAT test can be done in the clinic because you have to do it without a mask. Hygiene costs, we have added. We've not added a huge amount. We've added a smaller amount just to cover the basic. And there has been no refusal by the patients, probably because also all salons are also doing the same. So it goes with them, and they have been very, very happy with our hygiene, our sanitization, and all the care. They felt very protected, spacing out of patients, keeping all the ventilation and all of that. So the hygiene costs they're happy to pay for. And cost reduction of certain aesthetic procedures, I'll be very frank, the laser hair removal is what I have brought down. I have brought down 10% reduction in smaller areas and a 20% reduction in the larger areas. That is the one procedure I have brought down, only because that was the first, one of the first procedures that was asked for. So just a little bit on financials and return on investment issues. These are my suggestions that your teleconsults, are a great way to build and connect. Actually, I spend as much time on a teleconsult as I would on an in-person. I joke, I laugh, I make the patients feel good. I give them some tips, DIY, answer all their questions, never in a hurry. And then I find that even some of my in-person patients are then happy to do their follow-up on a tele. That helps to space out things. You could also help your patients, and therefore then they will sign up for treatments. If you make smaller packages, you split up previous ones where they can take the package deal but pay single as they come within the package deal. So they're not shelling out a large amount, they're giving you the package deal singly as they come. This will help also for you to get your amounts and them not to feel the pinch. Well, some people are offering EMIs and special deals. That's not been my call, honestly. Your prescription strength should be for a longer period of time. So I give a prescription for about 2 months. I give a prescription for 6 weeks. I prefix the next appointment. I give them numbers where they can contact us in case they have queries about a refill or a prescription, should they continue. So that has helped to keep the patients in the fold. And so then they come back for at least the products. So that has been a good way to keep, to keep the clinic running and to keep the amounts coming in. Of course, we've all had financial setbacks. So all of us across the board, younger, older, seasoned, matured, all of us have had cutbacks. So cut our personal expenses, assess our personal assets. Staff and doctor remuneration has had stepwise cuts, and then as things have improved from going down to a 30% from their full pay to 30% in the worst period, then going up to 50, then going up to 70, and then back. We've gone back to giving them their full salaries. And this year we have actually, in the second wave being, the lockdown has been shorter, so we've actually still kept it at full salaries. Enhance your social media presence in your free time. And I feel that the key is to be accessible, affable, and affordable for your patients. That's what I've followed. And when there has been a request for a slightly more reduction, as a special case, a person who's done a lot of treatments with me in the past, a loyal patron, we have done that. We have done that. We have been sensitive to our patients. So what was the first thing last year and even this year what is the first thing that we actually started doing? The very first procedure last year in June was actually a Regenera Activa. This was a patient who signed up, and this was a patient who wanted to do it, and then lockdown happened and he came. We've done a lot of PRPs. Patients are asking for it. Hair loss and scalp issues have just skyrocketed in number. Everybody's going through problems. And we've also done faces, what we first started with scalp. We're still doing it. We've been doing it year round. As far as the lasers go, I feel that we've had maximum requests for laser hair removal, starting with the upper lip of all the areas. So you may, and even a lot of patients have signed up for new body packages and even started doing their jawlines. And if you ask me, did I do an upper lip last year in June and July? Well, I asked them for a PCR 24 hours before. She did it, she came, we did it, and I did it myself really fast. I just took her in, I just quickly cleansed, shaved, did not put anything in the mouth to cover the teeth, and quickly applied the jelly, finished it in under 5, just 2 or 3 minutes, and just no ice, no nothing. And I just asked, put some sunscreen and asked her to leave. Then slowly the facial areas and the body areas came up, and the Q-switched and laser, the laser toning has been a big draw. That's because of the concerns that patients have. So I know Dr. Neeraj has a very favorite question. Between these two, I think the laser hair removal has had more requests and more footfalls as compared to the Q-switched, probably because the body areas have also worked. Now, as an injector, I have to say that because we've had to move really fast, complete the procedure as soon as you can, I have just become a smoother, quicker injector. I plan things even better. Everything's ready. I plan my patients out in my mind. I quickly go inject. I don't talk too much. I try to do it as fast as I can. So my skills have actually enhanced. And we have a large inventory. Obviously, all of us have had a large inventory of high-cost injectables. Now our orders are smaller. I have been placing smaller orders. I have to share that. And the companies have been very good. The industry has been very supportive, and they have taken back some of the products. And I think even the EMIs for your machines, the industry has been very perceptive and been good about it. And yes, if you're asking me if patients feel Botox fillers, mesotherapy, and skin boosters are essential, they do. So let me bring up this very sensitive topic. If there's a pandemic happening, then why are people asking you to go to their homes to do Botox? Did I get such a request? I got a couple, quite a few. Did I go? Yes, I did. And that's because they were testing. They had the entire household was being tested. The staff was being tested. They made me test. We did a couple of them. They did a couple of them. And then I went. If it was just a random request with not a known person, with no testing, no. But I have gone. Facials and peels, honestly, the Medifacial scored over peels. I think the feel-good factor was more, and actually the Medifacials have scored over peels. Peels patients were a little hesitant to do. As far as the EBDs go, HIFU actually scored, I think because it's done once and lasts a whole year, along with the non-ablative RF, the monopolar RF. These actually are doing really well. Thread lifts, the PDOs are quick, so they've been very popular, face and neck. But the double barbed and the double needle barb threads and the other cog threads, those have been fewer. In difficult times, how do we manage? Well, I feel that, along with everything that we're doing, we need to find a fine balance of the 4 quotients, along with our diet, our exercise. We as healthcare workers, our diet, our exercise, yoga, mental health is extremely important. So what are these 4 quotients? The intelligence quotient, the emotional, the social, and the adversity quotient. When you talk about the adversity quotient, actually, what are you talking about? It means that they have found in studies that those who are highly intelligent actually have poor adversity quotients, low. They're not able to handle adversity so well because they're always trying to apply logic. But those of us who have a little more higher emotional quotient, EQ, and the SQ, we still tend to talk talk to our family, we look after them, our friends, we keep up our groups. We actually handle adversity much better because we're able to stay happy. So to stay happy, we should remain emotionally calm, socially more, intermingling, but not physically, of course, but with various other ways that today the virtual world has brought about. So we should stay happy to be able to deliver to our patients. So that's me in my Alibag home. I've been super fortunate. And in this phase of my life, you can see how relaxed I am. I'm having my curcumin daily dose in the midst of greenery. And of course, I go to sleep every night with a good conscience that first do no harm and keep to my Hippocrates faith. This is the mantra that I think we should follow. Hashtag reflect, hashtag reinvent, hashtag reinforce. We're all in this together. And see, this is how we're all together. That's my bulldog, and he follows me everywhere, my constant companion. That's my think spot every morning, my chai spot. That's where I find peace and see my sunrise and sunset. That's me on my farm having some fun. This is Avla. I get my natural vitamin C, and these are my two best friends. And with this, I'm happy, and I'm keeping my adversity quotient high. And with this glorious sunset in the background, I'm sure we will all come out of this really well and on top of the game. Thank you very much. And I'm happy to take all your queries and questions.
Excellent, enlightening presentation. Yet again, one more Malvika ma'am, Dr. Malvika Kohli. Sometimes I wonder how come you make such complex subject look very simple. So whatever questions I had, everything was incorporated in your presentation. So I'll start with your few last slides on a lighter note. Yeah, I love those last slides, your bulldog, and then you plucking amla, and then your mangoes. So do we need, when see from last 2020 to 221, say 2021, almost 1.5 years, all of us are thinking, we the dermatologists or whosoever in India, those who have been through these two virulent waves, should we have a second home also? All of us, what will you advise on this? If we can afford, should we have one? Because now I am know you since ages, and last 2 years, I'm seeing you more relaxed. And during this period when everybody was struggling, you were doing so much constructive work from your second home. So do we need second home? This is what my question will be.
Sure. Thank you, Dr.
And this is on a lighter note, then I'll come back to the subject.
Yes, sure. Thank you, Dr. Neeraj, for your warm appreciation of both the lecture and my experiences. And yes, you know, last year we did so many webinars and everybody could see the green background and the birds chirping. And, you know, if you ask me, this has been my true earning, you know, and 16 years ago, when we decided to pick up land here and in Alibag, it was the best thing we ever did. We didn't know that there will be a time when we will use it this way, but it's the best thing we did because it was the best investment. And I always said, it's the best investment I've made to live a longer, if I can, but a happier, healthier life and add another dimension. And another dimension, as you saw, was nature. And nature brings out so much of peace, calm, and also creativity. You know, for us who are in aesthetics, it's so important to remain creative. It's so important. And, you know, I was churning this topic. I chose the topic myself, as you know, and it's very close to my heart. And I was churning this in my mind all while I was in Bombay. And when I came here, the penny dropped and I just could place everything in perspective. So you need peace and calm, and it's important to have a second home if you can, but you need to plan that well ahead. You need to start planning that in your late 30s and 40s. And you have to have passion also. You have to have passion also.
Yes, but you should have passion and then...
and planning.
The best thing, as the ma'am says, earning.
And you have to give up a little materialistic, yeah, you have to give up a little materialistic things for a little bit of, you know, the future.
Excellent. Agree with this, ma'am. Now coming on to your one of the first slide, can aesthetic practice survive pandemic? You said yes. I also believe the same. I'm doing aesthetic almost all the procedures since last 1.5 years. I've never stopped. If I have stopped, see, other than this, the lockdown period for if the clinic is shut for say 10-15 days. Otherwise, if there is demand, I'm always there to serve the purpose. But for the audience, I would like to know, as you have categorized the safest aesthetic procedures and which aesthetic procedures to be done with caution and procedures which are big no-no.
Sure.
Rather than saying it mild, moderate, or...
Exactly. So I think the safest work is whenever there's a mask on, even for body, and body, therefore, body work is safe. However, body work takes longer time. So that's also a bit of a risk because your contact time is longer. So you got to have, then sometimes we have to space out the body work into more sessions. That also I don't like. But I think the hair, I feel hair, because you can do it with the mask on, and the procedures don't take time.
Yes.
Neither does PRP, nor does Regenera. So hair is something very safe. In fact, you know that there's so many hair transplant procedures that have happened in this whole year.
Yes.
One of the top grossers of the year.
Agreed.
So I think hair is very is safe. I think for the face, anything that you can do with a mask on, you want to do glabella, you want to do forehead lines, you want to do crow's feet, you want to do masseters, you want to do neck, you can do. I think, honestly, one thing that I've done is I've started doing a lot more procedures myself.
Okay.
There was a time when the high point in my practice was when I was doing the very skilled ones. Now I even do a lot of them. My patients are so happy. I'm also very happy. And I've learned that way my staff is getting faster. Basically, it's about getting speedier. You do the numbing at home, you minimize time. So the ones that are a no-no, one is a no-no is anything oral.
Okay.
But I have done lip fillers. I've even done lip fillers when things were better. I've done it without an RT-PCR. In the high point of we did RT-PCRs. Later on, we didn't do RT-PCRs. We just took good history, and if there wasn't, it was good. We have done lip fillers, but I think anything to do with the mouth, anything to do with the nose, anything with the jet, these are all things that you have to be careful with. But actually, I think the divide has become a little blur. There are now gray zones.
I agree, ma'am. There is nothing like that. Now we are doing almost all the procedures.
Almost everything.
Recently, I did a CO2 laser on a mucus cyst, oral mucus cyst. And after a week, I got to know that she turned out to be COVID positive. So it happens, the risks are always there. It seems that we are vaccinated and it's working. So if
vaccine has helped to give us
audience, if I have to just summarize, there's nothing like a big no-no, I think what ma'am is saying, but yes, there are safe procedures, something like hair, all the hair procedures, whether you say mesotherapy, PRP, Regenera, or stem cell therapy, whatever we are doing in this scalp is absolutely safe. I would say absolutely safe, but yes, safer than all other procedures. Similarly, all other procedures which are taking less time as compared to, but lately what the new theory has come, and even exposure of 2 to 3 minutes, depending on the virulence of the infected person, depends on their infectivity. Even the other person can be infected. So this was the theory last year. So I don't know whether this year it's working or not, but yes, definitely the exposure less than any procedure which has less than 15 minutes exposure is considered to be safe.
Yes, that's what that's what will help you. But the double variant, I think, is far more, which we've seen this year, has been so infectious that people have got it sitting at home. So nobody has it, and yet they've got it. So there's that unpredictability. I think the most important thing is you have to have the confidence. The patient has confidence in you, but you also need to be confident about the kind of patient you're tackling. So if you're not very sure about the background, then it is better to yourself defer it. You can also defer. Yes, you can.
That's one point. And something like laser, full body LHR, should it be done during this pandemic? Or as you said, during the peak of pandemic, we should avoid it, and lately we can do it.
Yes. Honestly, we are doing. But what we do? We do legs 1 week or 1 day. We call the patient back into arms and underarms.
We divide in 2 days.
We divide it over 2 days so that the patient is not in the clinic for too long. We keep the window open. We wear double N95. It's very important to make sure the patient is wearing the right mask.
And you answered one very important question during your presentation also, which I wanted to ask. Because lately what we are seeing, most of the patients are COVID recovered. They give history that we had COVID-19 infection, say 15 days back, or they turned to be negative, or maybe a month back. So what is the safe time period after which we can do procedures on them?
So earlier it was that if the RT-PCR was negative, wait for 2 to 3 weeks, 2 weeks after a negative RT-PCR. So you keep doing RT-PCR till they're negative. And then 2 weeks later, then later on, because last year we didn't know the disease as well. Now we know it much better.
Yes.
But at that time, we gave longer times of 2 weeks to 4 weeks, even sometimes. Today, it's 4 weeks because the double variant is so infectious and the RT-PCR is coming negative in a lot of patients. So I think from the time that they've recovered, if they're a positive RT-PCR, then wait for the negative PCR and ideally wait 4 weeks.
Actually, what I'm
If you have a negative in RT-PCR, then you have no rider.
yes.
So it's still better to wait 4 weeks, I would say, in this second wave.
See,
If
nothing
you're
is,
going to work here.
nothing is
in the-
proven much, but what I think we know less and we assume more. This is what is about COVID.
Exactly.
We work on our assumptions. Then coming on to the questions which most of the time we are asked of. One is about a fee, the procedure charges during pandemic. Should we increase it? Should we keep it the same or should we decrease it?
So this is for procedures?
Procedures are consultation fee.
Yeah. So my consultation fee remained the same, and we just added the hygiene cost.
A lot of time these posts are there in the social media also. The common public posting it. What are doctors doing? They're charging more. Somebody has hiked their fees. Said that, does it make a difference? Should we do it? Because um, every 5 years or 4 years, our fee is generally we increase our fee. This year mine was scheduled, but due to this pandemic and I don't know what thought process, we have not done it yet. So this is the question from my side also. Should we or should we? Is it unethical? Will it be considered as unethical or it's part and parcel of our practice?
Sure. I would say that last year, honestly, actually, when we first opened up, we actually dropped our fees a bit, in the sense the teleconsult fees were lower than an in-person consult. The in-person consult stayed the same. 1 year later, my in-person remains the same. I'm not going to hike up now. I think that this is a very tough time, and I don't want to at this point, who knows whose financial burdens, the patients have a lot of financial burdens, and I'm not going to hike up my fees this year either, from the way I look at it. But my teleconsult fees, I did keep lower than my in-person fees. And but I feel that I don't think that that's, I know what I believe in. I give my patients a lot of time. My consult is my connect.
Yes.
So I justify it with time well spent. And I'll tell you one trick I do. I want to share this trick with you. It's not a trick. I just feel like doing this. So when I feel that there's somebody who may need a little more of me and taking more time, sometimes I give them a split consult. I tell them, get the test done, and then, we'll have another chat again. Either you drop in, or we'll do a drop in tele, or we'll do a drop in person. Or if there's a teleconsult where I can't make out too well, I tell them, I will convert this teleconsult into an in-person. Come by and show it to me. Or if it's somebody who wants to do regenera and is doing a tele, I'll say, drop in for just 10 minutes. Let me do a trichoscopy. See you physically. You go in under 10 minutes, but I'll have your images to make a decision. So, I am lending a little bit, I am lending a lot of extra facilities to my patients, so that while I may not have dropped my charges, I'm giving them more of my time. I'm giving them more of, a little bit of extras. I think the human touch has to remain.
Human touch has to.
This is not the time for.
I'm not very comfortable with teleconsult. I discourage teleconsult in my clinic. My fee is little higher than my normal clinic fee. Not much, some 100 rupees more. Just to, and people do ask questions. My staff always says you can come in person for that. But yes, we are doing a lot of teleconsult because this is the
era.
demand. This is the era, and you have to.
But this year I have stepped up my teleconsult to match my in-person, because we spend a lot of time on tele.
That's fine.
So I have stepped up that part of it. But then people are comfortable in their home, so it's okay.
So we have done that.
Yeah.
Now, coming on to, there is a question that your advice to the budding dermatologists, those who have recently started their practice, clinics, centers, invested a lot. Now they have, suppose somebody who has opened the clinic 2 years back, and then COVID came. So there are fixed asset costs. then there is staff salary, there are loans to repay, then there are installments of machines, then there is a lifestyle cost. So 2 years back, we were earning little better. So our lifestyle was something this, and suddenly we have to, are we doing that? What will be the advice to these budding companies?
Yeah, so I think the one lesson we've learned in COVID and this pandemic, which we hope never will happen in our lives, but then the young ones are going to live longer than us, so they should remember that we should build block by block. Don't over invest. I think that's the one lesson learned.
That's what.
And I think that's something that, so obviously this year I have also not really because I've not gone and bought a new machine this year at all. I haven't. And the reason is that I don't want to be pushing that machine to to cover its costs and doing all things that I don't want to do, which I never do in any case. So you know what I mean? So for those, but yes, the reality is that some of us have overinvested at any point in our lives. Till 2019, some of us have overinvested. So I think one will have to, like you said, and I mentioned in my slide, you'll have to become more frugal. You'll have to become more frugal. And then I gave those small suggestions about, giving smaller packages, about let patients pay in installments their packages. Make it easy for patients to want to come to your clinic. So don't look at the big amounts. If you're trying to get your investment back quickly in bigger amounts from your patients at this time, it's not going to work that way. Okay. So it's important to maybe, relook your structuring of how they can pay you and keep the flow in. You need to keep the flow in.
Okay. See.
Or you can give a few extra units of botulinum toxin to your patients to, like maybe a few more units to make them feel that, okay, they've got something special. So they come in for their frown, and then, you can do their crow's feet and give that to them in those few extra units. So these are the ways in which you can encourage some footfalls, but you're being good to your patients.
The same thing I'm saying. If they're not working, they are not earning. And this is happening since last 1.5 years. So
but the young ones have one advantage, Dr. Neeraj. One is that now, of course, they're getting vaccinated. But even when they were getting COVID, some of them were asymptomatic. Some of them was very mildly symptomatic. They didn't have the comorbidities that those in their 50s and 60s had to worry about. So I think they were probably also a little bolder, and they were going out there. And some of them started as early, I remember, as 1 month after lockdown. By April, a lot of people were working last year. And this year, even I have been working right through despite the double variant, and because I'm vaccinated and I'm careful, and we've created a bubble. So I think if you create a bubble, you're vaccinated, go and get vaccinated. One thing I wanted to talk about was the vaccine hesitancy, even amongst healthcare workers, the fear, the hesitancy to get vaccinated. It was quite shocking that so many healthcare workers now everybody is rushing.
Everybody is going for this.
So I think if you protect yourself, you can get out there and start working and, be careful and be good to your patients. You'll recover.
With time.
With time.
This question is asked again and again, that is staff salary. Should it be same? There should be some deduction, or should it be the same? So or if you're not working, no work, no pay. There are in some clinics, this is the concept.
See, I'll tell you. Yeah, I have really.
There are three. I think there are three approaches to this. One is practical approach, one is ideal approach, and one is ethical approach. So I need to know what exactly which is a mix of all, or
I'll tell you what. I have very old staff, and they have supported me, and they have looked after my clinic like their own. And their families depend on that salary. A lot of them are women. All of them are women, actually. Most of them. We have, of course, office assistants and all. So because their families are dependent on that salary, I never went down to zero. We went down to 30% last year during those 3 months of the whole of April, March and April last year. We paid them full salaries. Then May, June, we gave them a 30% deduction. Those who were working from home got 50%. Those who started coming back to the clinic went to 70, and then as things got better, to 100%. When the second wave happened, all of them were working. and we've had a shorter lockdown. And the clinics have remained open, and they've all come for 8 hours. They've all stood by the clinics, and they've multitasked. One thing that has happened is I've made them all multitask. And so as a result of which, 100% so far, let's see what happens. But if I have to, I may have to bring it down. They're prepared. I have prepared them. I've had a frank chat with them. My team is part of the whole game plan. They need to know, they understand, and there's no point not sharing with them. They need to know that they're actually today shareholders in the practice. The whole ball game has changed. They're shareholders in your practice, isn't it?
I do understand, but I have the same approach, and we sat together. But God is kind till now. Hopefully, He'll be. So we have not done this any staff salary reduction or something. We are working, and they also understand. But till now, everything is fine, because there are always shorter hiccups. Then we come back to work, and everything is normal within a day or two. So things are pretty normal. They come to near normal, and then we are back to the square one. But this cycle is again, it will keep on happening, I hope, for next few months.
But did you ever come back to, if I may ask you, did you ever come back to 100% of patient footfalls in the clinic in this year? I didn't. I came back in the peak best times.
On the contrary, I'll say I did little better than my previous practice in last year. In between, I was doing better. I always used to say in all my webinars also. Somebody used to ask whether you are near normal or normal. So I always used to say I'm doing better than normal. I don't know why. That 4-5 months were better than normal. Yes, from last 2 months, yes. So the staff has been there always with you in all the nick and neck. So I do agree with you in that regarding the staff salary. But it depends. See, our thought process and maybe a beginner's thought process might be different, ma'am. It depends on that. We can afford that after 15, 20 or 30 years of practice.
Exactly.
So that might be, that's what I say. There are 3 approaches to this. One is practical, one is ethical, and one is the ideal one, the mix of both.
A mix of both. But I must say that one thing I did notice was that even in the best times in Bombay, which was from about September to November, then post Diwali, there was a bit of a dip. Then again, the wedding season, December, Jan, Feb were great. December 2020, Jan, Feb 2021 were great. Still, we were working at around 80-90%, but we were doing much longer. We were doing like lot more HIFUs, lot more longer, larger number of syringes for fillers, because patients wanted to only come once a year. So they matched, you know what I mean? There was a little shift in the kind of practice. Yeah.
We'll take an audience question also. Dr. Sunita Nayak is asking that, Doctor, do you get queries related to hypersensitivity with fillers along with vaccination reported in reports in Western countries?
No, I've not seen a single case. I've done fillers before vaccines happened. I've done fillers after patients have been vaccinated. I give them a minimum of a week to settle down. Post-vaccine, no filler 1 week before they plan the vaccine, 1 week after minimum. And I've had no problems at all. I've even had to do a filler dissolve in another patient. And but I've not seen any.
Ma'am, in the initial phase, say last year, when we were not aware of this, we did filler next day also of the vaccine. So this is what was planned to. I have never seen.
No, I've never
read a lot about this. So hopefully we have not seen any case in India, yet not reported. So then one on a lighter note, Dr. Rajendra Tuteja is asking, any plot available nearby Alibag, ma'am?
Many, and they're going very fast. So if Dr. Tuteja I know he's in Raipur. If he's very keen, there's a direct flight to Bombay, and then he can take the Roro and start looking before the monsoon start. Yeah, but they're going like hotcakes. Alibag is like the new place to be, but I'm sure there are many more beautiful places also.
Yes, must be, ma'am. Then there's one more question, ma'am. As per experts, the third wave is expected very soon, and that might be even more fatal, virulent. So what should be our approach?
I think
because we were not expecting the second wave. We all were very casual. If otherwise, I won't say we all, but the general public was very casual. So for us as dermatologists, what should be the approach? That once we are aware, yes, that maybe the third wave. I don't know, but WHO is saying that there will be third wave in India very soon.
So you know what you were saying the other day when we were chatting about this topic, But you felt that the very safe wind, not safe, but a little better wind, quite a relatively good window would be from June 15th to July 15th, when as lockdown slowly lifts, it's still safer. And then as people get, for that 1 month, they're careful. And then after that, they begin to get back to their own behavior. So that's going to be probably a good time for us. And then I think when the festivals start is when, unfortunately, the third wave may come. So don't change your SOPs. I have not changed my SOPs this entire year, even when the good was going good. Keep the SOPs, keep your guard, keep the gear on, keep the N95. I still give shower caps, still give shoe covers. Keep sanitizer everywhere, keep the betadine goggles. Don't change your SOPs. Don't be caught off guard. Whether it is a peak or a low time, no change in SOPs. I think and vaccinate everybody and keep the same screening of patients before they come. And I think you'll be fine, because that's what I did. And I think we managed to ride the second wave pretty well. So the thing is that we should not get lax.
Yes, agree, ma'am. Now we are short of time. I'll come to the final question, and that's what we all want to know. When there is lockdown, and then of late, we are staying at home, taking a lot of safety measures. What are the social tips? We tend to go out, we tend to party. What are the tips which we should see till the third wave? Because we all want to go out, roam around, attend conferences. So what's the ideal social life, improving our social life?
I think you're the expert at that. You should tell us.
That's exactly. So I told you last year also, I always see a window. Suppose like I'm going out on 30th, I'll be out for 4-5 days because I'm finding it safer. If you remember, we did Srinagar conference during that window only. That calculation has to be there. Life is all about calculation. But this time, I think gradually we all are learning with this pandemic has given us, taught us a lot of lessons. In future, I don't know what exactly is going to happen, but we have our own way of living, I'll say, enjoying and meeting our friends. So that's something like what we form, we say a bio bubble kind of thing we can form in our close friends rather than doing more social outing, more bigger outings. You can meet very close friends in close groups and whose status are known to you.
Absolutely.
That is not 100% safe, but yes, it's safe practice.
Actually, I also had a few breaks, and so we went to an outdoor, like we went to Ranthambore for tiger sighting. So that was safe because we were outdoors. It was a very small group, no group, just one more couple. We do sometimes meet friends, but just 1 or 2 couples. Everything's open air. Beach walks. If you go on a beach walk and meet a friend, you're talking and walking at a distance. We keep our masks on. So while walking. So I think you have to live your life, but you have to make the right choices and sensible choices. And life is not coming to an end. This shall pass. We shall have many, many more good times. And I think we just have to be sensible about it. And honestly, we've got so much in life. God has given us so much. We really have no right to crib. And we really have no right to grumble.
I always say, "Waqt hi to hai, guzar jayega."
Yeah, this shall pass too.
This final question, I'll take one, ma'am. Dr. Satish Sitoria is asking, ma'am, what are the SOPs you are using in your clinics? Satish, it will be a very, very long answer, but you can summarize it in short, ma'am.
So actually that article that I posted, the October 8th one, I know Dr. Satish Sitoria, so I can send it to him and he can go through it. That actually pretty much summarizes what SOPs we are following, because the SOPs are very long. But I think if you want me to do a quick run, is outside the clinic door, because we have sanitizer, we have still have the foot covers, we still have gloves optionally, the plastic gloves optionally, shower cap, and we check whether the patient's mask is appropriate. Otherwise, we give at least a surgical mask to them, because now the double mask also works. Even if they're wearing a cotton one and put a surgical one on top, it's giving us more protection. That paper was out. Remember that article was out about double it up. So doubling up the mask is good. As soon as they end, we are definitely spacing out appointments. We're definitely not crowding up the clinic. all the patients, all the staff are wearing those plastic gowns, and they wear their shields only if they're doing the procedure with the technicians. The doctors are all wearing gloves, shark caps. We're still wearing our nitrile gloves. We're still wearing N95s all the time. We don't take off our N95s at all. And procedures are also being well spaced, so that there's enough turnover time of the room, open the window. We're doing all of that. And for anything where the mask is off, we're doing the betadine gargles. H2O2 we stopped. We're just doing betadine gargles. And we're definitely doing good history taking to ensure that we make sure the patient is being screened. So all of that, actually we're following all those SOPs that we had designed last year.
Yes, I do agree. I was part of
And the plume and the laser and the ablative. We're doing some ablative work. It's not like that. But then you switch off the AC and open the window, so you have to do all those things, small things. We're using ablative RF. Yes, we are.
Final question, ma'am, just my question. Of late, I bought two more smoke evacuators, and then HEPA filter machine also. Do they work, or are they just psychological boost to our?
I think you're being safe, and there's no harm in doing that. It's better to be safer.
So what I have done
HEPA filters have been proved.
Yes, it has been proved. So what I am doing each and every procedure, that the HEPA filter machine is on, even with, suppose if I'm doing CO2 laser, cautery, whatever, that HEPA filter is on. It works as smoke evacuator also, and it's proven to be safe, and there are multiple clinical papers in support of that. So this is one thing which I am doing since last 1.5 years. The only machines which I have bought is these HEPA filter in the last 1.5 years, as ma'am rightly said. So it was an excellent session.
One more thing, Dr. Neeraj, if I may ask, in that screening form, now we can ask 3 questions. Have you had COVID? When did you have COVID last? Have you done your antibody tests? Can you furnish that report? And we should keep the rapid antigen test in the clinic, the kit.
We started, but
selectively when in doubt. Like somebody's traveled to come, somebody's flown.
Even selectively also, nobody was agreeing to it in our part of this. Lucknow, nobody was agreeing on this. Doctor, I don't want to. I'm pretty safe. So now we know the status. Of late, we are not doing it.
And vaccines
become a safe, but actually it's a safe practice. The patient agrees. But for transplant, we do, ma'am. We do RT-PCR before that, and then only we go for any vitiligo surgeries. We do that, and that is mandatory.
So and one more thing we can do is we can ask for the vaccine status.
Yes.
In the form, you could add that, Dr. Tatoria, in the form about the vaccine status of the patient.
We already added actually. In my client profile form, that one line is, are you vaccinated? So they write yes, no, first jab.
What is your antibody level? We can ask those questions.
But the time will come. I think these all things has to be, we are learning with our own experiences.
But one last thing I want to say is, Dr. Neeraj, I know we've exceeded a bit of time, is that I must say that the one good thing that the pandemic has done, I think as a seasoned practitioner, you'll agree with me that in the last 5 years, our patients had sort of become a little different. They changed. That doctor-patient relationship was not so sacrosanct anymore. There were a lot of invasions into that sacrosanct, zone that a doctor and patient have due to many forces, external forces. I'll put it very simply. This pandemic has brought the doctor and the patient now, and the doctor-patient relationship is getting re-established. And I think
absolutely agree.
And that's one of the great outcomes of this pandemic. And I'm so happy to see that the humane bit has got re-established. Patients definitely have more regard. They've seen the way doctors have saved, my patients are so appreciative. They say, Doc, we are doing aesthetics, we're doing dermatology, but they still say, Doc, it's so good of you to come out and be in your clinic and be there for us. So imagine those COVID warriors, how much regard people have for them. That is one of the best outcomes of this pandemic.
Most of the Indian public, I'll say at least 80 to 90%. Yes. Thank you very much for so many take-home messages and so many excellent points in your presentation as well as in this discussion. I have learned, the audience have learned. So thank you very much, ma'am.